Cynthia, Jill, Barbara, Ken. All right, Caleb, you here with me?
I'm here.
Awesome, terrific. This is going to be a great. This is going to be a great session today. Um, yeah, Brian is not going to be able to make it with us today. He has some family obligations. One of his several children, I would assume. Brian has either 5 or 7 kids. Caleb, do you remember?
I believe it's 7. I think he just had his 7th.
Yeah, that's more than a baseball team or a basketball team. He's getting to be a baseball team.
Indeed.
So obviously this is Caleb's show, so thank you guys for showing up. And Caleb's going to take control of the presentation now, and this is going to be a really good time, guys. Thanks for showing up.
All right. Thanks, Greg. Guys, thanks for being here. Looks like we have just over 40 people live, so thanks for making it live. We spent a lot of time last time with just me talking to you, and we're gonna fix that up a little bit. In a former job, I used to be a sales trainer for orthopedic company, so we brought reps in doing hip, knee, and shoulder replacements, and we did several days worth of training for them. So I love training. And I already quit my old job, so it doesn't really matter. I enjoy the book business a lot more. It's a lot more fun to be with you guys, to chat, and you guys are just much more receptive. I found the reps kind of sleeping. They were just doing it because it was a job. You guys are doing it because you love it. You're looking to build something for yourselves, and there's just a great spirit of camaraderie and entrepreneurship. So thank you for that. Feel free to ask questions as we go. I do have a few slides to kick things off. We're going to cover just a few more basic topics to make sure we get everybody on the same page. And then we're going to spend about a third of the time, so 30 to 40 minutes, spending with a live broadcast or a live demo of eFLIP. We're going to get really into some of the strategies there. And we're also going to talk about pricing. I know that's one of the biggest pieces of questions that you all have, is how to price books effectively, both now as well as when we get to textbook season. So we're definitely going to spend some time there. And then, like I said, the last 20 or 30 minutes will be spent doing some questions and answers. So I'm excited. We're going to jump right in. Hopefully you all had a good week. Thanks for jumping on a second webinar in a week. This is a lot to ask of you, and I appreciate that. Appreciate your time, and let's dive right in. So this is session number 2 of the eFLIP Bootcamp. Again, session 1 was recorded. A little bit of the audio was messed up, so I may end up going back and record the whole thing on my own and make that available to you. I know that many of you have asked for that, and I will try and do that when I have some time. So thanks for that. I see some of the questions coming in. Keep those coming, and we'll address those as we get near the end. All right, so again, the field guides today, you guys are familiar now. Myself, Greg Murphy, and again, Brian Young can't join us today. If you want to check out Brian and Greg's topics, they have a lot of free information as well on their website, busproofbusiness.com. If you want to check out my blog, I'm kind of a data junkie. I kind of Mythbusters approach to some of the pieces on Amazon. I don't share a lot of my numbers. I think that's personal as far as my actual sales and profits and whatnot, but I do try and share some trends and some ideas and really help you understand what's possible in your own businesses as well. And you can check me out at thebookflipper.com. So again, today's topics, we're going to get into just a handful of other tips and tricks. We're going to talk about outsourcing your business. So a big piece of what Greg and Brian is doing is the bust-proof business model and the idea of taking yourself out of the business and what does that actually look like. So we're going to show you how you can do that with eFLIP, either with pieces of the business or even with the whole thing entirely. And then, like I said, we're going to get into a live demo of the software and then have time for your questions. So let's jump right in with a few tips and tricks. We mentioned this a little bit on Tuesday, and the idea is, what is your sales philosophy? So a lot of sellers either clump themselves into they're the fast nickel. They want to find books that have awesome sales ranks. They're just going to sell quickly. They may not make a huge return on investment, but they're going to make a little bit of a profit and do that over and over and over again. So I know Greg's bulk business, to some extent, there's a lot of fast nickels in there. He's going to sell a lot of books for $6, $7, and $8. I'm going to leave those books on the shelves when I go to library sales because it's not worth making 50 cents or $1 for my time. I need to make a little bit more, and I'm okay taking a little more risk and find higher ranked books as well. So I fall more into the slow dime. There's a handful of fast nickels in there as well. You know, if the book is selling for $8 and it's, you know, a 5,000 sales rank, I'm going to go ahead and send it in and make a couple dollars and just turn it quickly. And you need to really understand what your own philosophy is, especially when it comes to eFLIP. You can buy some higher ranked books I know some people, Gussie, for example, and I know I'm saying your name wrong, but I still haven't learned how to say it. But Gussie Moore is awesome. She's very active in a lot of the Facebook groups, a very friendly lady, and a very smart bookseller
Kushi.
as well.
I
Say it
think it's
again.
Kushi.
It may
Kushi.
be. She's on the call here. I think it might be Husha, and she'll probably comment and correct us.
Yeah,
But
she'll tell us.
we'll call her Miss Moore. How's that? But she is definitely a slow dime seller. She's not afraid to take risk. She shared an example the other day of a mispriced book with eFLIP. She was able to pick it up for I think $12 and sold it fairly quickly for 150. And that's just that's those options are out there. That's not obviously going to happen all the time. But you need to understand what your philosophy is. And I want to change this question a little bit. And I want you to think about books a little bit as far as what's your ROI requirement, or conversely, what's your profit per book requirement. So a lot of people get hung up on ROI, and I don't want to touch anything unless I can get 200% ROI. And that's not a bad way to look at it, but you may pass over a lot of book deals as well. So the idea is, what if you set a minimum profit per book and kind of went from there? So here's two examples. The one on the left, again, people are saying, hey, I want 200% plus ROI. So here's an option. You buy a penny book with eFLIP plus $3.99 for shipping, so you end up paying $4. You end up making, after Amazon's fees and the cost of the book, you make $10 of profit. So that's not bad. You made 250% ROI. That met your requirements. Off you go. What about the book on the right? How many of you would be willing to do a book like this, where you spend 20 on the book and you're going to sell it for probably 50 or 60? So after fees, you're going to net $20 profit. Now the ROI is smaller here. It's 100%, which again, it's laughable for a brick and mortar store. If they can make 100% ROI, they are thrilled. So we live in a great environment here with books that we get spoiled. Greg talks about them as meth margins. You're making 300, 400, 500% ROI, sometimes higher. So 100% ROI, nothing to laugh at. But again, if your mentality is I have to make 200% ROI, you would probably skip over a book like this. I'll buy books like this all day long. I'm only doubling my money, but I made $20 for one book. And you have to place a value on what your time is worth. So for you to order books, they show up at your front door. You're going to process them, put a label on them, condition it, put a price on it, and send it in, and then manage that book. You need to make sure you're getting compensated for your time. So if you're happy making $3, $4, $5 a book, go for it. I would prefer to work less and make more by having a higher profit value. So don't get so hung up on ROI, but keep that in mind as well. And that kind of ties into setting goals. So a big thing I'm going to talk about is slow and steady wins the race. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Selling books is a great way to earn a living, but you have to continually send books in, and it is a lot of hard work. Now, there's flexibility involved. I went golfing this morning with my wife. We spent some time out on the golf course. It's a beautiful day here in Denver. She's packaging up a shipment while I'm on the call, and we're both going to go to a library sale tonight. So we do put a lot of work into the business. It's not just fun and games. If you don't work hard, you're not going to earn a good profit. And so one thing I want you to think about is, as you're setting your goals for what you're going to do either in your book business or with eFLIP, make sure you have attainable goals, and make sure they're weekly goals that you can go to every single week. And what I mean by that, let me give you an example. So for me, I like to make at least $10 profit per book. What that does, a couple things. One, if I'm wrong and the price drops, I can still get out of it and make $4, $5, or $6 usually. It has to drop a lot before I make $0. So I'm really trying to hedge my bets. Two, I'm making sure that my time is being valued. I don't want to spend a lot of time processing books to make $2 or $3 on a book. In bulk, that's fine. If you're a bigger seller, if you can outsource your labor to where you're making some marginal revenue, that's a great way to go about it. But for me, as a kind of a solopreneur, or I guess a duopreneur with my wife, we want to make sure that we're valuing our time. So whatever your goal can be, let's say you have, even if you only have $100 a week you could spend and put into the eFLIP business for starters, you could buy 10 books easily. That's $10 average. If you're buying $6 and $8 books, you could get 12, 15, 20 books potentially. But just set a goal, even if it's small, 10 books a week, and do that consistently. Because you're going to order 10 books, it's going to take 10 to 14 days for them to show up. Then you've got to process them, send them back into Amazon. And it's a couple-week lead time by the time you order it to when you actually sell it. So be thinking about that, and then just keep doing that. Commit to do it week after week after week. And as they start to sell, as you learn the business, as you get better at pricing, as you're able to flip books quickly, then scale that up. As long as you can keep that money in the business, if you don't need it to put food on the table, to pay for rent, etc., roll that money back into the business and then eventually scale it up and do 15 books a week or 20 or 30. Myself, I'm doing a mixture of buying books online and in stores. I think it's good to learn in both cases, but I'm up to the point where I'm doing close to 100 books a week, and I could do a lot more online, but I end up buying a lot in stores, spending time on my blog, spending time making sure eFLIP's working well, and there's other things that take up my time as well. But learn to scale that up, find a really good way, and as you guys know, if you don't send in books to Amazon a week or two, your sales begin to decline. That's just the way it works. Keep feeding the beast, keep sending books in, and there's really nothing complex to it. It's a very simple strategy. Just keep doing that, and sales should happen as long as you're running your business effectively. So let's talk about a few other things here. One of the questions I get the most often, and again, we kind of set this question up by doing a textbook special or a textbook webinar to kick off several of you that joined eFLIP recently. We also have a textbook or a database of known textbooks within eFLIP. So textbooks are definitely the way to make the most money using eFLIP. I'm not gonna try and say that's not the case here. But I get the question all the time, well, how do you find non-textbooks with the software? We'll show you a couple strategies today how to do that, but I also want to just challenge your mentality when it comes to textbooks. And so one of the myths out there is that textbooks only sell during the fall and spring semesters, and that's not the case at all. And what I want you to do is turn it around just a little bit or come at it from a slightly different angle. So the reality is that textbooks have the highest demands during the fall and spring semesters. There's about a 6 to 8 week period in the fall. It usually starts late July and carries over into about mid-September that textbooks are just flying off the shelves. That period's a little bit shorter from what I've seen in the spring. It's usually about 3 to 4 weeks starting in early January and going through early February. So you're going to get a lot of demand there. But the reality is a lot of these textbooks, again, something that looks like a textbook, chemistry 9th edition, biology 5th edition, for example, they sell year round. And we'll show you that on the charts. And we really spent a lot of time looking at the charts last week, helping you understand how to read the Keepa charts, understand what's going on there. So if you can buy a book even in the off season right now and buy it for $6, $8, $10 and sell it for 30 or 40, take that cash now and just take that fast nickel, and that's going to be okay. You could price it higher and wait for the textbook season to come, but the longer you wait on a book, the more risk there is that that price is going to change. Now the price could go up, and that's favorable. It also could come down. So if you can cash out and make, whether it's your $10 a book or 200% ROI, whatever your goals are, if you can do that, don't be afraid to cash out. Take the easy money. Go ahead and buy that book again and just keep flipping it constantly. And then as you get closer to textbook season, you're going to want to price up in most cases, or price to be somewhere in the conversation. And again, we'll get to some of the pricing comments there as well. So we mentioned this during the webinar, and I really want to key in on this again, and it's how to build a proper SKU. So if you are just listing books one at a time on Amazon through Seller Central, you have the option to put a SKU in there, but it's not, you have to type it in. It takes a little bit longer to build. You can't reuse the same SKU. So you got to be a little bit careful with it. If you're using software, I use my own listing spreadsheet. It's free. You're welcome to download your own copy. You can find it over on my blog. If you're using ScanLister, Nathan Holmquist software, if you're using Inventory Lab, they'll build SKUs for you. And I'm going to just walk you through how I build my SKU, and then talk about the importance of building a proper SKU so you can come back during textbook season and price accordingly. So this is how I build a typical SKU, and if I have a textbook, I put this kind of funky looking word at the beginning. It's just TXTBK. It's the word textbook without all the vowels. So it's like a poor man's version of what is that, Wheel of Fortune? I'm too poor to buy a vowel. At any rate, I'll put the word textbook at front. The reason I'm shortening it is because I think you only get like 40 or 50 characters when you're building a SKU, and so I want to save room in the SKU to put all the rest of my information. So here's what I do. If it's a textbook, and it's not just if it looks like a textbook, it's if it sells like a textbook. So if there's lots of demand in the fall and or the spring, I put this code at the beginning of my SKU. And it's very important to put this at the beginning, because if you tuck it somewhere else into the SKU or put it on the ends, you actually can't find it later. Amazon doesn't let you search your SKUs by the middle of the SKU for whatever reason. So you can only sort at the beginning, and it's also case sensitive. So don't put any capital letters. Make sure you do it consistently. What that allows you to do is in the fall, usually in mid-July, I'll go back and just type into my SKUs, all my active FBA inventory. I'll put the word TXTBK up there and hit enter, and it'll return all the books that I've tagged with this textbook SKU. What that allows me to do is then these appropriately and reprice. Sometimes, again, the price has gone down. You've just got to make that decision to just cash out, and just like a stock, and just either cut your losses or make a minimal gain. Or in many cases, the pricing has come up quite a bit. You're very close to selling it, and you go, hey, based on the demand last year, I think it's going to go way up again. Let's raise the price and try and get as much or extract as much profit as we can. So that's the importance of putting the textbook tag at the beginning. I'll walk you through the rest of it, and you guys are welcome to copy this SKU system, use whatever system you want. It works well for me, and I'll show you why I do it this way in just a minute. So the second thing I put is my source. So in this case, I bought this book from eFLIP. I also put the month and the year. So this is a book I bought in June of 2016. The next number is the number of book I've listed that month from that source. So in this case, it'd be the 318th book I've listed. And the last number I put a decimal point in there just to make it obvious. It's how much I spent total for the book. So that'd be $9.14. And the reason I do that is I want to know, one, what I paid for it. Helps me with my COGS down the road, so my costs for my accountant, for taxes, all that fun stuff come April. Secondly, when I sell it or when I'm going to reprice it, I want to have an idea of what I have into it. And if I've got 50 cents or $1, I don't mind, selling it for $8 or $9 or $10 and getting it out the door. If I've got $9 or $10 into it, again, I'm somewhat limited by what the market will bear, but I want to sell this closer to $25 or $30 or higher just to make it worth it. So I like to know what I spent on the book. So here's another example. Again, it's a textbook. It's got the tag in front. This is one I bought on the way to Nashville. My wife and I like to travel with our business, and we'll buy books as we go. It's a great way to find extra inventory because we kind of tap out our own market from time to time. And it's a great way just to have fun while we're out and mix a little business and a little pleasure. This is a book I bought in March of 2016. It's the 530th book I listed that month, and I spent $1.50 on it. So that's my SKU system. Again, nothing complex, but that's the way I run with it. Let me show you why that's relevant. So here's a couple of books that I sold actually yesterday. I just went in and pulled some basic ones. So here's a book I sold for $21.90. You can see my SKU. This is just one of my sources, Integrity. I listed it in March, so again, about 2 months ago. We're just stepping into June. Hard to believe already. It's the 415th book I listed that month, and I spent $2 on it. So again, spending $2, selling for $22, that's pretty good. The other nice thing is when you're doing this, go back and look at what books sold and go see if you can buy it cheaply again. Now, this was not an eFLIP book. I spent $2, so I bought this in a store most likely. Right now, there's 143 used copies starting at $9. So that's not, if I can only sell it for 22 or 25, that's probably not one I want to buy. You'll want to jump in and go look at the prime prices. Maybe there's higher prime prices, and maybe that's something you can go back and flip again. So do this with your regular books. Do it with your eFLIP books as well. Here's another book I sold. This one's a little bit of a surprise. So we have a few scouters that work for us, kind of similar to Brian Young's model. And here's a book. It's not a textbook. It's just kind of just a regular paperback, older book. It's 15, 16 years old. Just a guide to pregnancy. So any how-to stuff usually sells pretty well. So our scouter in this case is Tim. He purchased it last month. It's the 86th book he listed. And we have our scouters put their prices in at 0. We pay on commission. So anything that sells, they get a commission on what sells. We keep a small commission as well. And so they put their cost in as 0 since it didn't cost me anything to get that book. So here's a book he sold for $75. And anytime you have a high dollar book, go back in and see what the other prices are selling for. And this one actually surprised me. You can buy this book, and again, this happened yesterday, so feel free to go buy these books. I left them out there. There's used copies for under $1. Now, in this case, I wouldn't normally advocate pricing that high. I like to do what Brian talked about on Tuesday's webinar. I'll look at the new price. In this case, it's about $76, and I try and price under that a little bit, because if the user can buy a brand new copy for cheaper than my prime copy, they're probably going to do that. So I like to price under the new price if possible. And let's go look at what the current market is. So there's a couple offers. Again, this is a live webinar. You're welcome to go out and purchase this book if you want. And here's something really strange. So one, here's our chart for a year. We see, several sales. This book is selling consistently. So that's something that's good to look at. Here's what's interesting. There's a cheaper prime price right now than mine. So there's a prime price available for $25, and whoever bought this book paid $75 to get my copy of this book. And I just throw that out there. One, I don't normally advocate pricing a dollar book at $75. You're not likely to find a buyer at that price. But keep in mind that the average buyer is not really rational. They could have bought a very good condition book from a reputable seller, 100% feedback, for 25 bucks, and they bought mine for 75. So that's kind of a head scratcher. And the rationale and the reason I think is their description's kind of a generic description. They said very good, may or may not include CD unless otherwise specified. Now this particular book, I don't even think it has a CD, but the fact that they didn't even care enough, they just used a boilerplate description. You know, I list very carefully, so I'm going to say exactly what's wrong with it, if it's good, if it's acceptable. I'm saying if there's any bends on the pages, if there's markings, and I have a very streamlined process to make that quick, but I do spend time doing that, and that helps my listing stand apart. So I'm fortunate I still have 100% feedback myself, but listing the book carefully, I'm just throwing that out. That's one way to differentiate. So guys like Greg that are just listing thousands of books a week, they're not going to do that. That's not feasible. They can't spend the time to do it. They're just going to say it's acceptable or good and throw a boilerplate template there, and that's okay. But for us little people and the ones that are only listing, 50, 100, 200 books a week, it's really important to make sure you can stand out with your listing.
I do, though, want to caution a little bit, guys. People take this too far, too, right, Caleb? I mean, there's people that will spend more time grading the book and then writing out the condition notes than Shakespeare spent on Hamlet.
Absolutely.
So I mean, we have to make sure that we don't spend too much time on this type of process, and we use boilerplate descriptions. We certainly do that, but it's not the kind of may have this, may have that. I'm sure all of you guys, most of you that have went around the internet have seen Murph books on Amazon before, and our good will say, hey, it has this on it, it has that on it. And if it has highlighting, we'll say it has some highlighting. But we don't say may or may not have highlighting, may or may not have this or that. So, and you can do that, and the girls are listing 1,000 books each a day. So I just don't want you guys to get too picky about the kind of time you're spending listing the books, because I think Caleb is 100% right. But at the same time, I think that we have to make sure that we don't spend too much time on that activity. Because if you're not streamlined the way Caleb is, what happens is that you'll make less money because you're spending all this time on 10 listings, making sure that every single imperfection is noted.
Exactly, and that's a good point. At the end of the day, your time is better spent finding books. But I've got limited books. I'm not going to go out every single day and scout. So at some point, if I can, scrape a little bit extra profit out of each book, and I do that by conditioning and I do that by pricing. I'm very cautious when it comes to pricing. I have limited books. I don't have thousands of books coming through my warehouse every day. I go out and handpick, 50 to 100 every time I go out and source. And so I want to maximize the potential of those books, but I also don't want to cramp myself and spend all day listing 100 books. That's just not a good use of my time either. So good point there, Greg. Ron, you're asking, is shipping included in the listing part of the SKU? It is. So that $2 book that I gave you, that's not an eFLIP. That's something I spent $2 at the store on. If it's an eFLIP book, it's going to show up as $4 or higher. So again, I wanted to share this example with you just to show you that I think you can stand out with your listings by spending a little extra time writing it. And also, buyers don't always buy the cheapest FBA copy. So if you're so concerned with repricing and trying to stand in front of the line, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the next sale. And I would challenge you, log right in. Online right now, for those of you that can pull up a browser to the side, check out your recent sales and look at the current market pricing. So one, see how much higher a buyer paid for your prime copy than the lowest merchant fulfilled. If it's a big gap, go ahead and buy some more merchant fulfilled copies and repeat the process. And secondly, probably a third to a half of the time, when they bought my particular book, it was not the cheapest book. So keep that in mind. You don't necessarily have to compete on price. You got to be ballpark. But even, in this case especially, it was $50 more. So I would not teach people to do that. That's not the normal by any stretch of the imagination, but it does happen. I just want to alert you to that concept. So speaking of pricing, let's go through a few things on pricing, then we're going to get to the software demo here in a minute. So 3 keys to pricing, and probably the biggest key here when doing FBA: do not trust a repricer to manage your eFLIP prices your textbook prices, or your high dollar book prices. And the reason for that is repricers are limited just like your scouting apps are. So when you scan a book and it looks like there's no prime offers, and you click the FBA button on your FBA scan app and it pulls up with several FBA offers, and you go, wait a minute, how come they're there but the app didn't see them? The app can only see the lowest 20 used prices. So if there's no FBA prices there, it won't see them. You can't see it either. That's just a limitation that Amazon's imposed on everybody, any programmers that access their data. So if you're trusting a repricer to manage your prices, one, if there's no FBA prices to compare to, it's either going to reprice it at your minimum. So if you set your minimum at $9, you're going to sell your $30 and $40 eFLIP books at $9 because the repricer, that's all it knows to do. Or it won't reprice it, and if you listed them all at $200, it'll leave it there as well. So a lot of times you're going to see prices at $100 or $200. We'll go back to this last one, Dream Books Company, $100. They probably don't reasonably expect to get 100, especially for a used copy. It's probably that their repricer couldn't see any of the lowest prices, and so it didn't reprice. So if you're using a repricer, you probably have books out there that you're either selling too cheaply, or you're not even repricing to match the market when you're using Prime. Now, if you're using merchant fulfilled, they can see any of those prices. You can get very effective repricing. But for FBA, I'd be very cautious, especially with textbooks and high dollar books. Again, we already talked about this, but use SKUs properly so you can easily find your textbooks. And again, make sure you put the word in front, whatever your shortcut or your keyword is going to be. Make sure you put that in front of your SKU so you can find it later. And then again, I like to go back a little before textbook season, and I'll either price up or down depending on what the season's looking like. And then I'll come back probably halfway through the season and kind of reprice again and really try and move my books if I can. If I can turn a profit, get that sale, it's a huge chunk of demand. I might as well try and move those books as fast as I can. And then after textbook season, you'll actually notice that the prices come down quickly. And that's because a lot of people use repricing software just trying to eke out the last possible sales and grab the last tail end of that demand. And so a lot of times the prices will come down quickly, and you need to decide, do you want to sell yours and just either cut your losses or make a small gain, or do you want to hold off and either sell it in the off season or wait till the next textbook season? So I like to look at it, again, before, during, and then kind of right on the tail end of textbook season. And then another one, learn how to spot sellers who are using repricing software. So we'll show you some examples today in the live demo. If you are going to try and compete with people that are using repricers, and the way to tell is usually if there's two people that are the lowest FBA price and they're matched each other, or they're within a penny or two. And then again, if you're really concerned, if you suspect it might be a repricer, come back in an hour or two and just refresh that page. And you'll usually see the prices kind of keep leapfrogging each other. They're just trying to stay a penny ahead of the other person, or 3%, or whatever their rules are. Now, don't try and compete with them. And again, I'm not getting into collusion. I'm not saying don't beat them by a penny. You're welcome to price however you want. But the reason I say this is because a lot of these people have really complex algorithms. And many of them are actually repricing pretty much continuously. So if you beat them by a penny, come back in 15 minutes, they're going to have beat you again. So then you either have to play their game with them, which it's not worth your time to keep doing it, or you need to realize what they're doing and say, you know what, they can fight for the next 2 or 3 sales. I'm going to price myself higher, find a more reasonable price, and let them sell out. So if you beat them by a little bit, they're going to leapfrog you. They're still probably going to get the next sale, and then you're going to be exposed. Your price is going to be lower than it could have been, and you'll eventually get the second or the third or the fourth sale, but you're going to have left a lot of meat on that bone. So we're going to teach you how to look for those a little bit. And again, don't try and beat them at their own game unless you've got some really sophisticated software as well. Okay.
And another thing I wanted to jump in real quick, Caleb, because the price is not the only thing that gets you the buy box with used books. It obviously is a factor. You can't be way out of the ballpark, but if you're closer to a buyer, you're gonna have a different. You might get the buy box against someone that's a little bit more expensive. I'm sure there's a whole busload of other things that play into that. We obviously don't know what the Amazon buy box algorithm is,
Sure.
but it certainly is not just price.
Certainly. And again, you'll figure that out by going and looking at books that have sold, and a lot of times yours isn't the cheapest copy, and you gotta wonder what else is in play. If repricer, they're not evil, they are helpful. I fired mine. I used Reprice It. I liked it. It was probably as good as they come, But again, there's just so many limitations with FBA prices that I just eventually said, sorry, I can't do this. So if you're going to use a repricer, I would recommend Reprice It. I have a lot of experience with them. If you have questions, you're welcome to drop me a line. I'm happy to help as much as I can, but just keep in mind they are limited what they can see. Reprice It has an option where you can actually price to try and get the buy box, and that's probably as good as it gets for FBA. Obviously, you guys all know that, or maybe many of you know this, but with books, if Amazon is selling the book new, they will not share the buy box on a new book. So if you're selling new books, that's one reason I don't sell new books hardly at all. They do sell well. The ones I've sent in do tend to sell quickly, and I do very well with them. I just don't sell a lot of them. The reason is you can't get the buy box away from Amazon. They're always going to retain it. That's they're the gorilla. It's their game. It's their sandbox, and they're going to keep the buy box. With used books, there still is a buy box, and again, Greg alluded to this. Nobody knows exactly the formula that goes into it, but it has to do with your seller metrics, your price. You've got to be competitive. You don't have to be FBA to get the buy box, but it does help. They refer to FBA if there's reason there. And also some of it probably depends on where the warehouse is located relative to the person that's looking at it. So if your book is in California and a user in New Jersey is looking for your book, someone else with a comparable price may get the buy box if it's closer to them, since Amazon's going to fulfill that and save a few dollars on shipping. So that's a very good point. Two more things, then we're going to jump into the demo. I realize time's getting away from us here. I want to talk about the importance of tracking orders, and Greg and I were talking about this before we started the webinar today. When he was doing, he didn't have eFLIP, but when he was doing buying books on Amazon and trying to sell them, this was several years ago before he got into the bulk business. Greg, you were saying you didn't track a single order, is that right?
Yeah, I'm relatively lazy in terms of tracking and accounting of any kind. And so what I would do then is I would just order the books, and then I would ship the ones that came into FBA. I had no idea if they came or not.
Yep. Now Amazon is requiring sellers now to put tracking information. Not everybody's doing it, but it's a requirement. They're trying to move everybody into that system. So in theory, if a book doesn't show up, Amazon's going to catch it for you and will actually make sure that you get refunded. But it doesn't happen all the time. I probably bought about 500 textbooks last month, and of the 500, probably 6 or 8 never showed up. And there was either tracking information, but it got lost somewhere in the mail system, or there was no tracking information, it never showed up. And so by keeping a simple record, and this is available when you sign up for eFLIP, it's in that email that you first get, or you can actually find it under your account. It's just a simple spreadsheet. You can make your own and add the condition, add whatever else is relevant. I just track what date I ordered it, what the ISBN was, because every once in a while you'll get a book. Let's say you order sociology, maybe you ordered the 8th edition, but they accidentally or on purpose send you the 7th edition. Okay, so you want to make sure that the ISBN matches exactly. If not, you got to check it. If it's selling for more, great, you got a gift. If it's selling for less, you got to decide if you want to still sell it or send it back to the seller. Sometimes they just made a mistake. Sometimes they're trying to abuse the system. So you got to watch out for that. I track my purchase price so I can easily find it, as well as the Amazon order number in case I have to contact the seller, file a claim, issue, or get a refund, whatever it may be. It's really easy to pull it up by the order number later. And then I'll track the seller's name as well. And then when it arrives, I'll just put the date that it arrived, and I'll just work my way down the list. And one other thing that you probably want to put in there, I probably should just add it for you, is the condition as well, to make sure that you get in the condition that you ordered. And what you'll do then is after you get 25, 50 books, you'll kind of go back and you may see a couple gaps where the book never showed up. And you need to go back in and see, did they cancel the order? Did it never arrive? Do you need to ask for refunds? And do that. Again, if you're talking $5, $6, $8, $10 books, you want to make sure that you're not losing any of those and just throwing money away. So that's something you want to keep into mind. I see Chris Williams said, new FBA buyers are smart enough to look for a lower FBA price. So going back to the pricing conversation, absolutely. And I know many of you do sell new books. eFLIP lets you look for new books and flip those as well. And again, a lot of students want those as well because they're going to come with the CDs and whatever other materials there. So just a quick plug, make sure you're tracking your orders. The second thing I want to talk about is how to outsource pieces of your business. So Greg and Brian have kind of put together a bust-proof business. And Greg, you want to just mention real briefly what the main concept there is?
Yeah, I mean, at our site, bustproofbusiness.com, Brian, I mean, you guys know Brian Young. He has a different model than mine. But both of us are are really intent about being in control of our time. And so what we always emphasize is if you don't have control of your time, you don't own a business, you own a job. And so our little logo there that we finally settled on is a dude that's about to get hit by a bus. And the question is, my business would run without me if I got hit by a bus or decided to take up golf or if I want to start building ships and bows or whatever. The point is that we want to only add things into our business that allows us more time for you. And eFLIP is one of those things. We can use this in addition to some other tools and other offerings to be able to outsource virtually all of our online book buying.
Certainly. So, and that's something I've really wrestled with in my own business as well. I went from my journey of working for Johnson & Johnson, working for a large medical device company, a great job. It actually had pension, which I know a lot of jobs don't. I don't think it'll be around in 30 years by the time I get around to retiring. But I enjoyed it. I got to travel, see the country. But once I got married, I wanted to spend more time with my wife. I wanted to spend more time at home. And I've always wanted to work for myself. And so I was very blessed, and I'm happy to live in America and have the opportunities we do and build up a business on the side and eventually step away from that. But if you're not careful, you'll end up just building another job for yourself. So if you're working for yourself, that's great. It's still better than working for the man, I would argue. But you got to be careful that you're still not trading your time for money. And that's one reason I've started outsourcing pieces of my business. So I'll share that in a moment. I've also started hiring scouters. Of course, selling eFLIP helps. There's some residual income there for me as well. And so there's things that you can start thinking about. It's a progression, working for someone else, working for yourself, and then finding ways to have, extract yourself from the process and let these businesses run for the most part in the background. So let's talk about a few of those that you can do with eFLIP. So the easiest way to do it is just to outsource a certain piece of your business. You don't have to outsource all of it from day one, but if there's a few key pieces, especially if there's something you hate doing or it takes a lot of time, find ways to pay someone else to do it, outsource it, etc. So there's several different key pieces involved with eFLIP: buying the books, receiving them, listing them, pricing them, and then going back and repricing. And you can outsource all of these. Now, when it comes to buying, I would recommend, especially as you're learning these skills yourself, don't just hire someone unless they're very familiar with books to just go buy a bunch of books on your credit card. You're probably going to get a bunch of duds that way, and it may not be worth it. But with eFLIP, you can buy books anywhere. So if you're traveling, if you got half hour, at lunch to step away and buy some books, you can do it. You can do it on your computer, your phone, your tablet. You can outsource this. It won't. I don't believe the software will let two people log in with the same credentials at the same time. It'll kick one of you out. But if you want to have a friend's or a virtual assistant or someone else log in when you're not in, you can feel free to share your credentials, and they can buy books that way. So you could outsource the buying. One piece I want to talk about is prep companies. So many of you have talked about these. There's kind of a lot of buzz out there involving prep companies. And the way this works is a lot of people that do retail arbitrage, or they're buying stuff by the pallets, will find a prep company and they'll send the pallets to them. One, they have receiving docks. They can take a pallet where you probably couldn't do that at your own front door, for example. And they're actually going to prep the books for you, put a label on it, do the conditions, and kind of work through it. Now, the problem is most of these prep companies have a minimum, so you have to send in, 100 items a month, or there's some sort of limits. And a lot of them don't deal with books because they're one-off. You're not sending in a crate of same item. You're sending in one-off books. We did find a company that does this, and I want to share a little bit about them. I'm not affiliated with them. I don't really know the owners other than reaching out and talking to them briefly about their services, and I don't get any affiliate commission. So I'm not pushing them because I get anything in return. I'm pushing this company because several eFLIP customers use them. It's called Texas Prep Pack and Ship, and I've heard very good things, and they also work with booksellers. So let me walk you through their process real briefly, and I'll give you some contact information if you want to get started. First off, you can go find them on Facebook. They've got an application right there if you just want to jump right in with the process. Here's how it works. Let's say you buy books online, so you're using eFLIP. You get these books, and you say, I don't want to ship them to my house. I'm traveling. Maybe I live in an RV. I don't want to deal with the books. Whatever your reason, you're going to outsource them. So you're going to ship the books to Texas Prep Pack and Ship with your name and their name. They're then going to sort them by seller, and they're going to check them in either daily if you're sending them a lot, or maybe once or twice a week. Again, it depends on the volume of books you're sending in. Now, the way they do this, one of the biggest questions is how are they going to grade your books? They assured me, and this is exactly what they told me when I emailed them. They said the books are graded by a professional with experience in brick and mortar retail and online selling. So it's people that are familiar with selling items, especially books. Then the book info is put into an inventory manifest, which is viewable and editable. So I'm imagining, I haven't done it, maybe some people here on the call, you can speak to this. I'm imagining you can go in, see what the books are, check the condition, see what you expected it to be, what it actually is, as well as you can probably change the SKU structure and kind of really see what's being checked in. So if you're on the call and you use Texas Prep Pack and Ship, drop me a chat real quick and say if that's accurate. Once the books are checked in, they'll give you, basically, you can upload it right into Seller Central. You can put it into Inventory Lab. I would imagine you could upload it to Scan Lister, some of the other bulk shipments as well. Another nice thing, I don't shrink wrap my own books, but if someone else wants to do it for me, they have the option. I'm sure you're going to pay for it, but they'll shrink wrap books in like new or better to ensure they're safe during the shipping process. And then they're going to label, sort, and ship these to the individual warehouses for you. So again, some of the headache that's involved with this, it is real work. They're going to manage it for you. Also, a really key piece, they're going to assist with the returns. So if you get a book, it's supposed to be very good, it shows up and there's water damage or it's really marked up, they'll take pictures, they're going to document the imperfections, and for a fee, they'll actually work and return that on your behalf. So again, they're kind of full service, and they're going to take care of things for you. So if you do want to outsource all the grunt work and you just want to focus on buying and pricing, they can do this for you. The cool thing, again, they don't have any minimums. They can handle high volume clients, but they're not going to discriminate against smaller sellers. And again, pricing is going to depend on volume. I didn't get an actual pricing quote because I wasn't going in as a customer. I asked a rough idea and I didn't get one, but from talking to other eFLIP customers, it sounds like they're about $1 a book, maybe a little bit more. So again, if you're buying books that are $10 and you can afford to spare $1 and not have to deal with dealing with the whole process of listing it, this may be a very good idea. So I'll let you make up your own mind there. But if you do want to find ways to outsource it and stop trading your time for money and just pay someone else to do it, this company, for example, is a good place to start. And again, I don't get anything for referring them. I've just heard great things, and I want to pass along what I've heard about them. So if you want to get an individualized quote, go find them on Facebook, or you can email them at support@texaspps.com. So I'll let you do with that what you will. Let me see if anybody has chatted about it. How many a month is considered high volume to them? I don't know. Again, they don't only deal in books. They're going to be dealing with a lot of pallets. So I imagine you could probably send them 500 to 1,000 books a month, and they'd have no problem with it. Again, reach out to them, get the process started there. All right, I've talked enough. Let's jump right into the demo. We're going to switch the screen. Greg, anything else you want to mention before we jump into this?
Sorry, I had my phone muted and it yeah. No, I think that's a great tip. I would certainly do that if I were starting out. You know, we don't like to have nobody likes to have a bunch of textbooks show up at their house and their UPS guy get upset with them. You know, when I was doing this at first, I actually had a driveway that was about 30 feet long, and it was on, I would say, a 25 to 30 degree downgrade. So we'd get these textbooks that would come here, and then the UPS guy would have to haul all of them up this huge hill to get onto his truck when they went out to Amazon. And so it certainly would not hurt my feelings if I was in your shoes or the UPS guy if we were to outsource this to the Texas company or anywhere else.
Certainly. And I do outsource a little bit of this. I ship a handful to myself as well, and I just like to keep an eye on which sellers are trustworthy. I like to see how the process is working. There's something about physically touching the books and understanding just how the process works and making sure that it's still working appropriately. So I do send a handful to myself, but the majority of the books I order with eFLIP and also just general textbooks to flip, I'm actually shipping to my siblings. So I have a sister. She's a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids, and you know, being a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids is a full-time job, and she loves that. She wants to stay home with them, but she also wants to contribute to the family. And so what I do is I drop ship the books to her. She receives them. She's got a covered porch. It works out really well, even in the snow. She lives in Ohio, actually not that far from Greg. So actually, Greg, I need to come visit you sometime soon, and I'll work a family trip into that. So I send her the books, she checks them in, and I just pay her $1 a book. So she'll list them. I'll do all the pricing myself because it's very technical on how I do it. But she'll do the conditioning, she'll help with returns, she'll kind of run the process there, and it allows her to work on her schedule. You know, when the kids are down for naps or in the evening after they're down for the day, it allows her then to earn an income. She can earn a couple $100 a month because I'm sending her several hundred books. And I really like that. It works out well. It helps provide an income for her, and it's a lot of fun there as well. All right, so without further ado, let's jump right in. Can you guys see the eFLIP software here up on the screen? I'm assuming yes. All right, we got a couple yeses. Thank you. All right, so we're going to jump right in. We kind of shared some of the basic strategies, and we're going to go back. We're going to start with one of the basic ones again, and then we're going to quickly branch out and do a couple more advanced ones. Key points for those that weren't on the first one. Again, we've got over 20 million ISBNs in our database that we're actively monitoring. We update these. Pretty much, we're updating thousands of books every minute, so this is on a continual cycle. We're not quite there where every book is getting updated twice a day, but pretty much anything under a sales rank of 1 million is getting updated twice a day, and we're working on improving the throughput to get everything in the database updated twice. So if you come later, several 100,000 books are going to be updated, and so the prices are going to change quite often. Again, Amazon is a very fluid marketplace. The prices change constantly, and this is a way for you to come back. And again, you can perform a search, come back a couple days later, do the exact same search, and you're going to find very different books, some of which are going to be great buys that weren't great buys a week ago. So again, that's kind of the strength behind the data. And again, with the filters, all the power is in your hands. So the more creative, the more you understand how these work, the better deals you're going to find. There's some very basic searches, and again, we'll just start with a basic one. Again, let's say you want to spend $1 or less, and again, that's plus $3.99 shipping, so it's going to be up to $5, all the way down to a penny. We want to find books where Amazon's on the listing for, say, $50 or higher, and maybe the new price is 20 or 30 or higher. Again, the higher the new price, the less likely it is to be a consistent penny book. It's probably just dropped down for a little bit. We're going to leave everything else the same. Again, what we talked about earlier in the week is you don't want to get too many of these filters and get too specific and too granular, because you're not going to return very many searches. You're going to think there's not very many good books to flip. So I always encourage you to start broad with your searches, see if you can find great books. If you can't, then go ahead and narrow your search and try and do it that way. So always start broad, see what shows up. I like to stick to ranks under 500,000, under 1 million. I know other people are fine going up, and I don't mind some long tail books as well. But for the purpose of this, we're just going to stay with 250,000. Once you like your search, go ahead and just click search. It's going to return everything on Amazon with a sales rank under 3 million, and it's going to show it right down here. So here's a bunch of books. It's sorted right now by price, so all the penny books are first, and we've got several pages worth of data that meet this specific criteria. So what you can do then is you can just go through, and again, we've filtered. Now we're going to analyze. So if you just click on the title, it's showing that it's a penny. Let's go see if the penny offers are still there. And again, if the offers aren't there, that means someone either beat you to it or the prices changed or whatnot. So there's penny offers here. When I look at the Keepa chart, I see it hasn't sold in several months, and it just sold a couple copies here. This may be eFLIP users trying to buy it to flip. I don't know. If we zoom out to a year, it really isn't a textbook. It sold a handful of times in January, so maybe it's a spring semester, but I don't know that's necessarily a textbook. We can click on Prime and see what the prices are, and this is a very high Prime price book. Now, it's not selling very often. This is not going to be a fast nickel, but it could be a slow dime. You can pick it up for $4 and sell it reasonably for about 25 bucks. I see the new prices here are about 32. So if you want to price under the new, you can do that. $29.95 is a great place to be. Again, 25 is a great price because people that don't have a Prime subscription can still get free 2-day shipping if they have $25 worth of books in their cart. So that's a potentially good book. Again, this is live. You're welcome to bring up eFLIP on your side and do these exact same searches. And if you want to buy these books, have at it. If you want to speed up that process, you can click on the ISBN. It's just going to bring up the Prime prices. So again, I want to alert you of that functionality. And you can kind of go from there. You can sort this by rank if you want, so you can find the best ranks in here. That's going to go high to low. This is going to go low to high. So everything that meets this criteria, so between a penny and $1, selling for new for at least 30, Amazon's on it for at least 50, is going to show up here. Okay, so that's
Caleb,
yeah, go for
I'm
it.
sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but so if you click on the ISBN, it opens the Prime, only the Prime prices. And if you click on the title, it opens all the prices.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yep. Now, the challenge with this is if you click on the Prime price, for example, just the way Amazon works with their coding, with their URL, I haven't figured it out. My programmer hasn't figured it out. There's no way to kind of unselect Prime. So you're kind of stuck with the Prime prices up there. So in order to see if the cheap books are still there, it's showing me that when this was updated, there was a book there for 26 cents. When I go there, the price has actually gone up. So either they've repriced or someone bought the cheapest offers in the last couple hours. So you can find the cheap books here as well. And of course, you can click Prime from this screen. It's just a regular screen. So that's how to work the main system. And again, we talked about the charts last week. This book is selling very consistently. This is a book that could sell very quickly. Now, the price isn't where I'd want it right now. There's not a lot of room for profit. But if this continues to sell well, it's not out of reach to get closer to $20 for this. And again, if we zoom out to a year, we see very, very popular sales here in the fall, as well as in the spring. You'll also notice Amazon sold out of it in the fall. They restocked just in time for the spring semester and then ran out again. So this is a good sign. Amazon can't even keep it in stock. Even though you could buy it now for $4 or $5, you're not going to get 20 today, but you may get 20 a couple weeks from now. And then when textbook season comes, you may easily get that $20 book. So that's a little bit more of a risk. The price doesn't make sense today, but it may tomorrow. So again, this is just a very basic search. Again, if you like that search and want to come back later, you can always click Save, copy this URL, and paste it somewhere safe in a Word document, email it to yourself, whatever you want to do, and you can actually then come back and find this exact search later. Now, one of the things I advocate, so this is kind of the basic buy low, sell high philosophy, and we talked about this last week as well. I like to go a little higher. So I like to find books that are selling for a couple dollars, maybe up to 10. Again, after shipping, you're going to pay about 14. And I don't mind paying that. Again, I'm trying to make $10 a book. So if I can find a $10 book that's selling for 30, after all the fees are factored in and shipping and my time, I'm still going to make about $10 for the book. And I'm happy to do that, even though it's only 100% ROI. And again, it's somewhat laughable that we talk about only 100% when we're talking about this business. So I'll do a search like this, and maybe I'll make the new price and Amazon's price be a hair higher just to make sure I can have a better chance of finding these books. And let's go see what pops up. Again, we're sorted rank low to high. Another thing you'll notice, any of these links that you click on, they start out green, and if you've clicked on it, it turns over to gray. And we did this. This will store it as long as you keep your browser, as long as you don't clear the cache on your browser. If you need to know how to do that, you can, again, email me, or you can just Google it for your specific browser. I use Chrome. That's the browser I use. I got a lot of plugins that I play with, and I'll show you how to use those as well. They'll turn gray, and that'll let you know you've looked at this book before. So right now, this book is about $9 plus shipping, so 13. The cheapest Prime, there's one outlier. Apex is here at 13. A lot of times they'll have multiple copies. And actually, Brian showed me a really cool extension. It's called Check Stock. C-H-E, you can see it up there, Check Stock, C-H-E-C-K-S-T-O-C-K. Don't put a space in there if you want to find it in the Chrome extensions. If you just click on this button, it's actually going to pull up how many each of these sellers have in stock. So this will save you the process of having to add it to your cart, see how many books they have. So Apex only has one, so they're going to sell out probably quickly based on the sales rank that we can see here. And then the next lowest Prime price is almost $50. So yes, you have to spend $13 or $14. We'll go see if that's still there. It looks like the price is held steady in that ballpark for the last several months here. But if you can flip it for in the 40s or even $39.95 or whatever your price point is, you can probably make some good money. So again, this is out there. You guys are welcome to go buy it up right now while we're talking. If Apex had like 40 copies, for example, I'd probably steer clear or come back later and see if they sold out. They tend to have a lot. Rent You tends to have a lot. Text Crew here has 5 in stock. So you're going to have to, again, it's just like a stock. If you're going to hope the price gets higher than $60, you got to wait for all these copies to sell out ahead of you before you can get your price. So in this case, I might like to come in lower, and we'll talk about pricing in a little bit. First off, let's zoom out, see if it's a textbook. Yep, so we see a lot of textbook pricing. But again, even in the off season, the highest this was ranked, or the worst it ever got, was about 100,000. So this book is probably selling every single day still. And if you can buy it for $13 and get 40 or 45 or 50, go for it. You could probably get 70, 80, 90 during textbook season. I don't know for sure. It depends on what happens with this book. It depends if there's new editions. Again, Keepa's got several years worth of data. So this book's been out there for a long time. We're going to show you how to see if there's a new edition. We'll walk you through it. But right now, I like what I'm seeing. Let's go see if the $8.90 book is there. actually the books change in our favor. So these are probably repricing software that are just trying to beat each other and get the next sale. Now looking at condition, the back cover is ripped slightly, good condition otherwise, and then here's kind of their boilerplate template. So I'd probably stay away from this one. If it's just a little bit of back cover rip, again, on a textbook, most students don't care. You could probably tape it up and again, list it as acceptable. Don't lie about the condition, but just say why it's acceptable. This one here doesn't say anything about it. So you're just going to have to trust that this seller is selling decent books. This one is stained. Maybe you stay away from there. Or maybe you pay a nickel more and get a good condition book, although 87% feedback isn't amazing. Glenn the Bookseller, I buy a lot of books from them. They often have multiple quantities. Let's go click on our stock and see how many they have. You may be able to pick up several copies of this from them. Looks like they just have one left. And again, I would not recommend buying Prime to resell Prime. That's against Amazon's terms. Again, if you reach out to them, you could email them, ask for permission, ask to do a 5-day free shipping instead of free 2-day shipping. You may be able to get away with that as well, but make sure you reach out, make sure you have it in writing, and if you're in doubt or you're worried about your account, just don't buy Prime. Stick with the merchant fulfilled offers, okay? So this looks like a very good book. Let's say we're gonna buy Glenn's book for $9 plus $4 shipping, so exactly $13. We go plug it into the calculator, say I'm gonna spend $13 on this book. Prime, I reasonably expect to get this book. And again, if you want to sell it quickly, you could match this price at $48. Again, you're going to be good. They're going to be good. Maybe you could price at $49.95. Maybe you're willing to wait a little longer and hope the price keeps coming up. And again, the price could come down. We don't know what's going to happen, but this has very consistent sales, and I like what I'm seeing here. So let's say we price just at 48, just be conservative. If we did that, I'd spend $13, and I'd make almost 22 after all the fees are factored in. And again, the ROI is less than 200%, but I'm more concerned with a profit per book. So I can easily make $20 on this book. Even if the price drops and I can only get $35 for it, Prime, I'm still going to make $10 for my book. Now, it's less than 100% ROI. I'm spending 13, and after all the fees, I'm only making close to 11. But if I can make $10 for a click and a little bit of processing work on my end, that's not a bad gig. So again, this one's out there. If you guys want to rush out and buy a couple copies, feel free. Let's talk about how to see if there's new editions of this book. So the way to do this, probably the easiest, is just to copy the ISBN. We're going to go back over to Amazon. We're just going to paste the book into the regular search bar. Now what's going to happen here is it's going to show the book. This is the Cosmic Perspective. Here's the book we were looking at. And it says other formats. It just says Kindle edition. Now if there was a new edition of this book, it would say there are newer editions of this book available, and there's not. So I'm not worried about a new edition. This is only a couple years old. It came out in 2013. A new one may come out. Typically, if textbooks come out in January, the new one will come out in January again. So for the fall, I'm pretty safe. It's a pretty safe bet to assume the 8th edition is not coming out until January. So I would have no problem buying this. Even if there was a newer edition, you could go look at that as well. But with the sales rank as strong as it is, I'm not worried. I'm buying that now. I expect to sell it before August or in August at the worst, and I'm fine doing that. I'll go back several editions if the data tells me that it's continually selling. So that's a good way to do it. Let's see if we can find a book that actually has a newer edition. Let's go find here's one from 2007. So if there's a new edition, there's likely to be one here. Again, we're going to jump over to Amazon. We're just going to plug that book in.
I have seen that book many, many, many times.
Yeah, it's a good friend of yours. Now, even though this is 2007, there's nothing listed here to say there's a newer edition, so there probably isn't. And again, we're sorting by rank low to high, and these books are so popular in the off season, there's probably not new editions. So let's change it. Let's just go find one for the sake of example. We're going to go find older books here, and let's go see what pops up. So here's a book from 2000. So if there's going to be a new edition, here's a good example of that. Let's see what pops up. And again, there's actually probably no new edition, or it would have told us about it here. Okay. Let's find something that's got like a 5th edition or something.
Did you see that gift card? Did you see that Amazon was going to give you a gift card?
That's a good point. So you can buy it for $8 plus shipping, so about $12. Amazon will pay you $10 for it right now. And that's a very good point. Some of you have asked, can I buy books and sell them back to Amazon and take that cash as a trade-in gift card? Sure. It's not cash. It's just going to be a gift card, but if you're buying books on Amazon, that's great. It has to be in good condition, and if you lock your price in today, you only have 7 days before you can actually ship that book to Amazon. They'll give you a prepaid label. So if you're going to try and hedge your bet and lock your price in and then order a cheap book right now, one, there's not enough, by the time you pay shipping, there's no profit to be had. But Amazon's saying we value this book, or a third-party company is saying we're always going to value this book right around $10 right now. So if they put a $10 value, you should at least be willing to pay $10 for it because you could probably get more. And in this case, there's one copy at about 25 and then several up north of 30. So this is a book you can buy, and you can get it for about 12 bucks delivered to your front door and reasonably expect to get about 30 or 35, and if you're willing to wait, maybe up into the 40s. So again, I know, Greg, you really like the trade-in value. If Amazon values it, you should as well. There's a good reason they do. Let me see if we can find a book.
Basically what we're doing there, the reason I find that to be so important, and is that, you know, these are multi-million-dollar companies that have these relationships with Amazon to buy these books, these third-party books. So that what they're saying by saying, hey, Amazon's going to give you a $10 gift card, that's saying that Amazon is selling those books, or the right to those books, or, you know, maybe Amazon, you know, Amazon warehouse or whatever is selling it. These are all people that have really, really smart data guys that are deciding these prices. And so all of that assumes that there's going to be high demand. And so I'm going to basically stand on their shoulders and say, well, look, I'm going to go with them. I'm going to like ride out what they think. If all the other data says yes, that's definitely a big bonus. That's gonna if they're offering like even $3 and I have to buy it for 10 to try to sell it for 40, that's just going to be one extra piece of data in the favor of buying the book.
Certainly. So the buyback price isn't so much for you to sell it back to Amazon, although if you can get, you know, $30 and Amazon's going to pay you $29, you might as well just take the money, especially because you're not factoring in fees yet. I'm still trying to find a book that's got a newer edition. I'm striking out right now. Here we go. All right, so if you type in a book like this, if you type the ISBN in and it says, hey, see newer edition of this book, that's Amazon telling you, hey, there's newer editions of this book. So you can click here. We were looking at the 4th edition. It'll bring us to the newest edition, which is the 5th edition. But again, and this one's selling, of course, it's a newer edition. They're selling it for $60 used, is the cheapest. Amazon will give you $35, $36 for it. But the older edition of the book, let's go look at it. You know, it's ranked about 600,000 right now. And if we look at the sales history, this is the last 3 months. It's still selling well. It's not selling like every day, but every couple of days. And if we look at a year, it still has a clump of sales here in the fall and a clump of sales here in the spring. So this is a book that, even though there's newer edition, it's not going to die as soon as the new edition comes out. Many schools use the older editions. Many professors let you use the older books. So we can pick this up for a couple of dollars. There's a really low outlier price right here. And the cheapest prime, you know, in this case, there's several books in the $10 range, and it doesn't really open up. It doesn't gap up to 15 or 20 very quickly. So this isn't a good book to buy from that standpoint. But if these prices were 20, 25, 30, I would have no problem buying it for a couple bucks because this book is still selling. So that's how to tell if there is a new edition, but don't let that scare you away from buying the books. Let me show you a few other ways to use the filters. And again, I was trying to find something that had the word edition, so I just did a title search, and I wanted to find books that had a little bit worse rank and were a little older. All of those things point to that there's probably newer editions, and I was able to eventually find one. If you ever want to just start over, just simply hit clear. It's going to clear your search out. And again, don't forget that you also have access to this known textbooks database, which are books that are going to be used either in the fall or the spring at least one college across the country. Again, we've got access to whole databases full of what books college bookstores want, what books the wholesalers want, and we're able to kind of take that data, combine it all together, and make that available to you. So these are books that are going to be used. They're on syllabus lists for college campuses. Let's show you a couple other strategies. One thing I really like to do is, again, the basic search is finding cheap books, so maybe a couple bucks up to $10, that Amazon's selling for a lot. Now, a lot of books Amazon's actually not on the listing, either because they sold out or because they just don't carry it, or maybe the publisher doesn't have an agreement with Amazon. So if we're doing this, we're only going to find books where Amazon's on the listing. And if we scroll down, there's some books where Amazon has no offer. Now again, Amazon's prices are ceiling. If they're on the listing for $50, I'm not going to price at 60 because unless they sell out, no logical buyer is going to buy a used book for more money than they could have bought a brand new book directly from Amazon. If you want to find books where Amazon's not on the listing, it's a little bit counterintuitive, but here's how you do it. You drag your sliders down to where it says 0. You drag your top slider all the way down to 0. And if we click search, this is going to find books that are selling between $2 and $10 merchant fulfilled or used. Let's make sure the new price is a little bit higher to make sure we have a good window to make some profit. And this is going to find books where Amazon is not on the listing. So if we scroll down, here are all the books, and there's no offer from Amazon on any of these. And that's great because now there's no theoretical ceiling. We can price these as high as a customer is willing to pay. And let's go look at these and see what happens. So here's a book we can get for $2. The cheapest prime right now, there's only one of them, is basically 12 bucks. And if we look at the sales rank, it's not selling a crazy amount, but it's selling several copies a month. If we look at a year, I don't really see a lot of sales in the fall or the spring, so it's not a textbook, but it is something that's selling decently well. Now again, it's only selling used for a couple of bucks, so if it's a $2 or $3 used book, I'm not going to try and get $50 or $60 prime. But that being said, the new prices are over $60 at this point. And you can see that with the blue line up here on this chart. So if the new prices are 60 and you want to price under that, you could theoretically get, I would have no problem asking 25. That's kind of my go-to price point. And this would be a good book that as soon as this seller sells out, you're next in line for someone that really values prime. So again, that's just a different strategy. We can look at some other books. Here's another $2 book. This one, there's no prime prices, so if you buy this book, you can come in, you're the only prime seller. Now in this case, there's only a couple hours worth of data, so Keepa hasn't been tracking it. That doesn't mean this book is not a good seller. We can see the current rank's just a little over 2 million, which isn't great. If Keepa's not tracking it, again, they're crowdsourced. So unless you start tracking that book, it's not in their database. Now it is, it'll be there in the future. We can also click on Camel and see if they have any data. Now in this case, they don't have it either. Now that we've asked for them to have it, they'll start tracking it, and whoever comes to look at this a couple months down the road will have the benefit of the doubt. Now, when there's no data in this case, I'm probably not going to take the chance and buy it. I don't know how often it's selling. But we can keep working our way down. Here's another book, no prime offers. We see a handful. Again, this is 3 months. If we zoom out, it's got about a half year's worth of data. And I'm seeing maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 sales in the last half a year. That's not crazy. But if we can buy this book, looks like there was one for $2. It's still available. There's a couple of them. If you are willing to take a little bit of a risk, you could buy maybe the 2 lowest priced books, and now the lowest price has now jumped from $2 to almost $5. You can actually take those off the market. You could then price these. Again, that $25 price point is a very good price point. And this is not going to be a fast nickel. It's probably not going to sell quickly, but a lot of people will only buy prime. And if they come look at this book and it's not available prime, they'll just move on. They assume it's not for sale. They don't want to deal with the risk. If you're willing to take that risk and offer it for 25, you may find that buyers will actually pay that. And that's another really good strategy to do, is to try and find books where Amazon and no other prime people are on the listing. And that's a good way to run with it.
Caleb, I wanted to jump in real quick because we've gotten this question several times by email, and now it's popping up here too. How do you get the Camel data and the Keepa data or whatever? How do you get that to show up on the Amazon page? Can you go over that for the people here?
Absolutely. So let's go back over to the Amazon page for that one we were just looking at. Keepa has an extension. I prefer Keepa for 2 reasons. Camel's a great data source as well. They both do the exact same thing. I like Keepa because it shows the price and the rank on the same chart. So the green line here, if you guys were on the call on Tuesday, if not, go back and watch the replay of that. The green line is sales rank, so I just glance at that and see it sold a couple times about 3 months ago. It went about 2 months without selling, and then it sold a couple times here in the last month. It also shows the price history, so it's been a penny, a buck or two for the last several months. The way to get this installed is to go up in Chrome. I don't know if it'll let you see that, but if you go to your settings, let's see if this will actually show up. There we go. Go over to extensions, and you can go all the way to the bottom and say get more extensions. And these are basically like software that plugs into your web browser. So again, I'm using Chrome. I don't know if these are available for other web browsers. And just simply type in Keepa, and it'll pop up with Keepa Amazon Price Tracker. It's free. Simply click to install it, and then every time you load an Amazon page, it's going to automatically put this chart right here for you. And this is a gold mine when it comes to actually finding good books to flip, because you're not having to click through and go to Camel and spend a couple minutes looking around at different sites. It all integrates right on your site. The other extension that Brian introduced me to the other day, I think someone has mentioned you can get how many is a good one to go at to get. I did check stock. It's free. And again, it's all one word. And it looks like this. Check competitor stock levels on Amazon. So I installed that. You can see it right up here. And when you go to the page then, you can simply click that box and it'll run through one by one by one and show you how many books each of your competitors have in stock. This is great because if you, like that last one we looked at with Apex Media, if you're waiting for them to sell out, you want to know how many they have in stock. If it's just one, that's going to get taken off the table and you can get your higher price in the near future. If they've got 30 or 50 or 100, maybe it's not a good buy anymore. So those are it's simply Chrome extensions. That's a great question, Greg. And by all means, add those. They're free. Actually, Greg, you introduced me to this one too, the news feed eradicator for Facebook. So if I go to Facebook now, it doesn't show me anything else. It just shows me, it's just the inbox essentially. I can see the notifications, but I'm not going to see pictures of my friend's food and that kind of stuff. So it helps me waste less time. Lots of cool extensions. If you're not familiar with Chrome extensions, there's some that are for a fee, but many are free, and they will definitely help when you're trying to improve on your Amazon game. So very good question. Let's go through a couple of the questions here. Anne says she's reordered one of these or bought one of these and sold it and reordered it. Great. Very good feedback. If you're selling books, take a risk. I wouldn't buy 10 of any book up front unless the chart was just amazing and I found a really good deal. Buy a copy or two, send it in. If it sells and you get a good price, check your sales. If there's still decent copies to buy, go buy it again and keep doing it over and over and over again. So Dudley, you'd asked about buying multiple copies. At this time of the year, I do like to stock up for textbook season because August is just around the corner. So if the price makes sense, especially if I look at a chart where the price has been about $20 and a bunch of repricers ran the price down to a couple dollars, I'll buy several copies because it's not likely to get that cheap in the near future. And so I don't mind buying 5, 10. I've bought as many as 30 or 40 copies, but I've gotten burned on that too because the price drops, you're stuck with 40 copies and it's hard to offload those. So I've done very well when I bought 40 copies. I've been able to make a lot of money. I've also had times where I sold a handful and made great money. The price dropped and I had to either offload the rest and just break even or even lose a little bit of money. So treat it like stocks, spread your risk out over several different books.
I remember this social psychology book. I can't remember the author, but it had it had goldfish on the cover. And for years, I would buy that. I think 3 years it lasted, where I could buy that on the off season for $1 or $2. All of the bookstores would have them for nothing, and then in season it'd be selling for $50 or $60 all the time. And but just like all good things, it stopped. But yeah, you can, especially if you do this for a while and you start to really understand the market and understand specific titles, like the old 6th edition of Campbell's Biology used to be great for years. Even after they came out with the 8th edition, the 9th edition for a while, you could buy that 6th edition for a long time and then know that you were going to sell through when it came to high season.
Certainly. And again, buy a copy or two if you're in doubt, spread your risk out, and if 1 or 2 sells, look what sold, see if you can still buy it cheaply merchant fulfilled, see if there's still high prime prices, and just do it back again and keep riding that gravy train until, like Greg says, eventually there's new editions that come out, eventually the market catches up, there's more books that drive the price down, and at some point it's no longer a good flip. But as long as it is, keep buying it, keep flipping it.
I wonder if at some point there won't be someone that tries to just buy out, like just corner the market in biology books, to where they just buy them all up and then price fix and all that fun stuff.
It's actually,
I wonder if they could do that.
It's funny you mentioned that. Most people, some of the fear, and it's understandable. People ask, well, if everybody has access to eFLIP, will this not work ever again? I mean, will this idea of buying merchant fulfilled and selling prime disappear? And it's a good question, but I think you fail to understand how big the Amazon market is. They're selling 100,000 unique titles based on what we know about sales rank every single hour. And a lot of those titles are selling multiple copies. There's huge players in this space that buy hundreds of these copies, or they do buybacks. they're going to have way more books than even if I buy 10 copies of a book, which sounds like a lot. If it's a $10 book and I buy 10 of them, that's $100. I'm barely going to make a dent. I'm not going to move the market price. I'm not going to change anything. I'm not really going to be that 800-pound gorilla that's a price maker for those of you that trade stocks. I'm not really going to impact it. I'm just a small player getting in, getting out, making small profits, and repeating that process for as long as I can. Greg, to your point, I've actually identified a few books, and I may try it this fall. And the way I did it is I found books that have a limited number of offers. So I went down, I think I went like 50 or less, and found books that have a great rank. And then I went and found stuff that has good textbook-like patterns, and either ones that Amazon's not selling or they're selling for, say, $100 or higher. And I went in and looked, and a lot of books, when you click on them, let's go look at a couple. A lot of books only have a couple really low-priced offers. This is just sheer fortune, but here's a good title. It's selling lots of copies. You can see the price has been up as high as $15. Right now, two people have gone after it with repricers. And again, Goodwill's acceptable. I'll buy books from them all day long, and acceptable books are usually just fine. They just list everything as acceptable. If you were to buy both of these $2 copies, so you'd spend $6 a piece, the market is no longer a $2 market. It's now a $14 market. And if you were to go through and even buy up several of these other copies, you could move the market price from $2 to, say, $20. And then if the market is 20 merchant fulfilled, I'd have no problem getting 30, 40, or maybe $50 prime. And if you're willing to do that, and every time somebody drops a lower priced book, you just buy it, you could essentially keep the market price high. Now, you may find that people aren't willing to pay that much, but a book like this that's selling consistently, that's a potential book that you could do this with, even if you didn't have $1,000 to throw at it. You could just buy a couple copies and move the market price noticeably. So that's a different strategy. That's not for the faint of heart by any means. Don, you'd ask, can you go over finding non-textbooks? Absolutely, I promised that at the beginning. Let's jump right in. So hopefully you understand how to find books where Amazon's not on the listing. The other way, if you just open this up to everything, and again, we're finding books that are $2, a minimum new price of $40, and we do that search just like this, it's going to find books where Amazon's on the listing or not on the listing. So it'll bring up everything if you just keep that filter wide open. So make sure you understand how that works. If we raise this up a little bit, it's going to bring only books where Amazon is on the listing. You're going to potentially miss a lot of good flips. Okay? Now remember what I said earlier. I want you to get out of the textbook mindset. If we've got a book that has a phenomenal sales rank, so let's sort these by rank. Let's go find books with awesome ranks. So we already did that one. Let's hit a different one. Criminal Law Today, 5th edition. Obviously a textbook. Let's go look at it. You know, this is a book you can pick up for about $10, including shipping, delivered to your door. The sales rank, it's selling consistently. So even in the off season, again, we see a very typical textbook pattern where it hugs the bottom of the graph in September and then in January and February. But in the off season, the worst this book ever got ranked was about 350,000 in the fall or the winter. And then in the summer, the worst it got was roughly the same, 200 to 300,000. So even though it's a textbook, if this makes sense to buy it now and flip it prime and make whatever, if you can get $10 a book or $8 a book or 200% ROI, whatever your terms are, forget the fact that it's a textbook. Buy it, sell it, repeat, and just keep doing that. The other way to take advantage, let's go look at the prime. So here's one price at 10, one at 16, then it jumps up quite a bit to 30. We're going to hit the check stock extension. So Apex, again, they often have multiple. They only have 3, so I'm not real scared about that. There's one here, and then the price gets really high. So I have no problem buying several copies of this book. The other thing I like is this book was priced much higher in the fall and in the spring. The merchant fulfilled copies were up around $50 in both of those periods, and now the price tanked sharply after the textbook season finished. Again, that's people with repricers and lots of quantity trying to eke out every last sale. They drive the price down. That's great for eFlippers. And now the price is even lower than it's ever been. It just keeps ticking downwards. So go ahead and buy a couple of these copies and sit on it. And again, I would expect to probably get $29 or $30 even in the next couple of weeks as these copies sell out with a sales rank as good as this is. So forget the fact that it's a textbook. It's still selling right now, and if you can make money now, then go for it. The other strategy is to price this really high and throw it around $50 or $60 or $70 based on the fact that it got merchant fulfilled up in that ballpark, and just wait for the sale to come to you. And again, you're going to want to put a textbook tag on it, come back to it in July or early August and make sure that the prices are moving towards you. And if not, you're going to need to readjust. That strategy is great. You can take a $10 book and turn it into 50, 60, 70, but you're running the risk that the market price is going to come back up and you're sitting on it for several months. And if you have the money to do that, go for it. Otherwise, go ahead and just sell it and cash out, take your $30 and go do it again. The other way to find non-tech.
I'm sorry, I wanted to interrupt just a little bit before we got past that point.
Sure.
One of the strategies that we use is to actually, I mean, we don't go through the keep a graph or anything like that, but especially during the fall textbook season, you know, we have another one coming up in just a few months. So we're willing to take my staff. There's 2 people in my whole operation that are allowed to price textbooks, and they get very they start pricing books very, very high for the August and September sale. So if it's a low ranked book, a lot of times they'll get in the middle of that first page. Because we know that, you know, we want to maximize those sales in August and September, and we know we got another shot at it just in a few months. And again, We're not paying $4 a book. Obviously, we're just paying. We buy books by the pound, so it doesn't hurt our feelings if we have to wait an extra season if we bet wrong.
Certainly. And while we're talking pricing, let's look at this one again. Again, if you found this book for $1 at a thrift store, you have the same pricing rules apply. I'm looking at a couple things. I'm going to look at the prices that I can see. I'm with okay, I'm gonna mess up your name. I'm just gonna call you Miss Moore. She always talks about pricing above the fold, and what she means by that, she likes to be in the lowest 5 prices, and I've really adopted that for myself. So thanks for that strategy. I owe you one. I like to price in the lowest 5 prices, with the exception of textbooks. And the reason for that is, like in this case, there's a couple outliers. There's a $10 and a $16. As soon as those sell, the market price for Prime is going to jump up to about $30. So I was a day trader. I spent a summer in China trading on the U.S. markets. I traded penny stocks, and I was terrible at it, but I understood the patterns. It helped me understand what I'm doing with this business. It's not a business for me. I'd much rather do books. I can make much more money, and I'm not trying to play against as big of players. But what they teach you in stock trading is you're just trying to make money on the margin. So you're trying to buy a share of stock and sell it. So what you do is you find the resistance price. So I've got a lot of prices here right around $32 to $35. And then there's a big gap again. It jumps up actually close to 50. So if I was going to price this, if I paid $1 for it, you know, if you're really happy just selling it, making $15, price it right here at $14.99, just move it, get out the door, that's fine. But you're going to leave a lot of money on the table. If you really want to sell it fast, price it at $31.95 or match this guy at $31.99. Wait for the sale. You're probably going to sell it in a couple weeks as long as a bunch of other offers don't come in, and just take your money and move on. The other option is to wait, and you got to wait till the prices burn through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different prices. And again, some of these may have multiple. Let's go look at that. We'll let that load while we're talking. And I would tuck my price in here under the next resistance. So there's another couple prices at 50, and then we have to go to page 2 before we can see more prices. So if you're willing to wait for a couple more offers to sell out, come in here at $49.90 or $49.95. Just match the rest of these people. You can do that, and that's a way to wait longer. You run the risk of the price continuing to tank, but you could potentially get closer to $50 if you're comfortable waiting. So if this was me and I was going to price this, I would either price at $49.90 and just come back and reprice it during textbook season if I guessed wrong, or even if I did guess wrong and the pricing dropped during textbook season with all that demands, I may still eventually get my price. Or if I move it fast, if I needed the cash to go pour into other books, I'd probably price right here at $31.99 or $31.95. So that's the strategy when it comes to pricing. And again, on a typical book, if it's not a textbook, I love to price in the lowest 5. I think that's a very good strategy. In this case, I don't see 2 prices right next to each other, so I'm not real concerned with repricing software. So if you just needed the cash and you wanted to beat Apex Media by a nickel, go for it. However, they usually reprice, so just a heads up there. If you try and beat them by a little bit and come back in an hour or 2, they're probably going to beat you. Let's go see if we can find an example of a repricer. And actually, I want to look at prime prices because I don't care about merchant fulfilled. Again, there's a couple outliers here. Again, Amazon Warehouse Deals is on a lot of listings. It doesn't concern me unless they have a lot in stock. And again, we can look at that. So here's a great example: 771 in stock. They're the market maker. You're not going to compete with them. Now they may change their price come textbook season, but I'm not going to bank on that. So this is a great example of why it pays to see how many they have. Come back in a month and see if it's down to like 100 or 50 and it's going away. But I have no expectation it's going to burn through these offers. Now, if you do have a good or a very good copy, you could still price higher, and someone that values condition will actually skip over this one and possibly buy yours. So you still could have a good chance of getting 20 or 30 for this book, but this is one personally I'd probably just steer clear of until they start running out of stock. Let's see if we can find another repricer while we're talking here. Again, here's just an outlier price. As soon as they sell, you can get closer to 40 or 50. Again, these books are out there. If you want to go buy them while we're talking on the webinar, feel free. I'm going to try a few more, and if I can't find one, we'll just leave it at that. Okay, here's a good example. And again, RentU and Apex Media, a lot of times they'll have multiple quantity. Several of these sellers do. You'll notice they're a penny off. If you come back in a couple hours, my hunch is that Apex will then have leapfrogged RentU, and the price may be down, $24.65, or it'll just keep going down until they sell their quantities. We can go see how many they have in stock pretty easily. RentU has one, so as soon as they sell out, the race will stop, and Apex will probably just hold steady wherever they're priced. So if you're going to beat these guys, keep in mind that they're just going to beat you right back, and you're going to leave money on the table. When I see two repricers like this, I'm actually just going to ignore both. Now, Apex does have 14 in stock, but the rank is amazing. It's selling lots of copies a day. At some point, they're going to sell out. So I'll come in here and price right around 37 or right around 40, or it does open up quite a bit. I may wait and actually price closer to 50 or 60, depending on how much profit I want to try and extract from this book. So again, don't try and beat repricers at their own game. You're welcome to try, but you don't stand a very good chance of beating them. They're very good at that game. Let them do it, ignore them, and price higher. All right. I think that's about it. One more thing for non-textbooks, or at least textbooks I'm not worried about a new edition coming out. Again, I'm all about the data. If you want to try and find books where you don't have to worry about newer editions, let's go, we're going to set our new price to 30 and then Amazon 40. You can actually take the publishing date. We're going to go back, let's say, like 12 years. So we're going to go find books that are still under 250,000 sales rank, that are at least 12 years old. And if they're still selling well, one, if there's new editions out, they would have come out by now. Publishers do new editions every 2 or 3 years just to keep the price of the textbooks high. That's the game they're playing. So here's a book, obviously a textbook, but the rank is under 10,000. It's phenomenal. So let's go look at it. You can pick it up for $3 or $7, including shipping. You can get closer to 20, so that's not bad. We look at the sales rank, and it's phenomenal. So yes, it's a textbook from that standpoint, but it's an older book. If there's a new edition out, it's not affecting the sales of the old one. And so that's a really good way if you're concerned about new editions. Just go find really old books. Here's one from 2000. Again, it looks like a textbook, but in this case, it still has a very high prime price. You can pick it up used for $12 or $13. Maybe there's not a lot of skin or meat left on that bone, but that's something you can keep in mind as well. The other way to play it, I like to go find books where there's no prime period. So I'm going to bring Amazon off the table. Again, I'm setting Amazon to 0 and 0, so we're going to find books where Amazon is not on the listing. Make sure the new price is decently high. Again, I'm looking in that $2 to $10 window. And we're going to go find books where there's very few used offers and very few new offers. So I'm going to bring both of these down, let's just say to 40, and just see what pops up. So if you can find books here, I think I missed the search. Here we go. If you can find books here, odds are there's nobody selling them prime. And the only way to find out is to click on the ISBN here and see. So we can pick up a book here for about plus shipping. Here, there's no prime. This is great. Let's see when the chart loads. It's selling a lot. So this is a great book to potentially buy. Amazon's not on the listing. The new price is high, so I really like it. This is not a textbook. This is just some random hardcover book. Let's see if we can still get it for $8. The price moved a little bit, but not much. There's still a couple good copies. Again, I like this book because if you were to buy a couple of these cheaper copies, you're going to move the market price from $8 up closer to $20 or $25. And now you can command $35, $40, maybe $50 prime. And someone is probably willing to pay $40 compared to $25 for a competitive merchant fulfilled offer. So these are non-textbooks, and again, that's a very simple way to find them. Again, all I did is I brought my number of offers way down just to see what we could find. And again, we could click through a couple more of these just to see. Here's a $9 book. There's a couple Prime, but here's one, again, an outlier price. As soon as they sell out, you can be next in line at $25, $30, maybe $35. It's selling.
And you can even see now that AYY store just launched too, so they might not even be someone we need to worry about.
Exactly. A lot of sellers will or buyers will ignore that because it's just launched. So you may just skip over that and price inside the next guy here. Amazon was on the listing. They sold out, and they've sold out in the past as well. Again, this was really popular in the fall. It didn't get popular in January, so maybe it doesn't really look like a textbook, but this is something that people are buying at least in the fall for whatever reason. All right, let's go through a couple more questions. Greg, if you have anything else to say, go ahead and do it. I know we're at our time. We've done an hour and a half. We're having fun. Hopefully you guys have learned a lot. I'm just going to keep answering a few more questions. If you have them, get them in here, and then we'll let you go within about 10 minutes. Would I use the same condition as the book I buy? Probably not. Again, everybody grades them differently. If I buy a good conditioned book and it's, it shows up pretty beat up, I don't really care about condition. I'm not going to try and fix it. If it's a textbook, most students don't care. I'm just going to list it as acceptable, say why it's acceptable. If it's got a bad cover, if it's got a lot of markings, I'm going to say that, and I'm just going to list it as acceptable, send it back in. If it's beat up to the point where I'm not comfortable selling it or it's got water damage, I will just email the seller. At least half the time, they usually just refund me in full, especially on a cheaper book. If it's a $2 or $3 book, they're just going to refund you. They're not going to deal with the return. They're going to take your word for it. If not, Amazon requires them to pay for the return shipping or at least reimburse you for the return shipping. So you're always going to be fine. It is a hassle, yes. If you don't like it, find a prep company. But no, don't just rely on this condition, because whoever this seller is, especially a newer seller, it may not be the same way you would describe good. So make sure, when in doubt, if I'm between good and very good, I'm going to downgrade to good because I want to make sure the customer is very satisfied with the book they're getting.
And when you're buying from especially a Goodwill or one of those other very large sellers, but Goodwills in particular, they hire people that sometimes they have like developmental problems. So what they want to do is keep their process as simple as possible. So a lot of times they'll list all of their books as acceptable. And so we've gotten books before from Goodwills and Better World Books too, where I thought the books were like new, and they listed them as acceptable. So that happens all the time.
Yep. Another question, and it's a very good one. Am I concerned with Merchant Fulfilled Prime? So this is a new program. It's really only available to larger sellers. Greg, are you in this program yet?
If I was, I would have already been able to retire, but no, I'm not.
Okay, so it's very limited sellers, and if Greg's not in it, I would estimate that very few people are. What it is Amazon's trying, they're just experimenting right now. They're trying to experiment with opening up the value of Prime with trustworthy sellers. So guys like Greg, they use DHL. They're using some different, it's not media mail. They get great rates because they're sending in books pre-sorted in bulk. And so it doesn't cost them a lot to ship books. That's how they're making money on penny books, because they get the shipping money. We'll just address the penny book question right there. So what Amazon's trying to do, and they're just playing with it. They may move off of it. They like to experiment. That's one of the things that Amazon's always doing. What they're doing is saying, hey, guys like Greg are trustworthy. They can get the books to the customers within 2 days. So if you promise to get your books there within 2 days, then we'll go ahead and let you sell. It'll look like a Prime offer, but it's going to come out of your warehouse rather than sending it into Amazon. So am I concerned with that? Yeah, if it happens full scale, it may change the number of Prime offers in the game. But again, if Greg's not getting invited to it, there's probably very few people in this program at this point. The other thing is Greg's in Ohio. So if he were to ship a book, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you were to ship a book to California, you're going to have to pretty much pay for overnight shipping to guarantee that it gets there in 2 days. Is that accurate?
Well, here's the trick too, is that a lot of these Prime guys that are getting merchant fulfilled Prime, the ones that are far away, there's a lot of 3 to 5 day Prime offers too. And as you also know, it doesn't count that same day. So we would be able to hit California in the 3 to 5 day window, especially given the Prime premium, right? We'll
Sure.
be able to, we'll definitely, and we don't have to pay that pick and pack fee. We wouldn't have to pay for their outbound shipping fee for Amazon, I'm sure, since we were selling it ourselves. And we'd be able to get super cheap, like 2 day delivery. because we were doing massive amounts of volume. So
Certainly.
I'm really pumped about it if they would let me, but they're not going to, because our metrics are saying, well, my guess is that our metrics are so bad. They're like, well, it takes you 8 days to get to people. And I said, well,
Yep.
yeah, because you only give me $4 in credit. So that's probably why the reasoning that it's not opening up to more people. Guys like Jensen probably have, I'm sure they probably had lunch with folks that work at Amazon, so they're more trusted. But just like always, it could be that this program opens up wider over time, and folks like me do get the nod, which would make things. I would love that. I would absolutely love it.
Sure. And again, I'm not real concerned. Even guys like Greg, if they're going to get the 2-day shipping, he's going to have to open a warehouse maybe in Denver, and he's been trying to convince me to work with him at some point. So maybe we'll do that. But these guys are going to have to be massive operations, have multiple quantity of every single book, so they can fulfill orders East Coast and West Coast within 2 days, guaranteed. The other issue is that's just not going to happen in some cases. Customers are going to get annoyed, and then Amazon's going to have to make the decision of, do we want to keep customers happy, or are we just going to go back and say, look, sorry, that test idea that we had failed, and it's just not going to work, and let's just go back to only doing Prime where it's in our warehouse, where we can control it, we can deal with the returns, and Amazon's all about the ease of use to the customer. And again, that's why I love to buy from Amazon. You can buy from other websites all you want, but I'm going to keep buying from Amazon because they're always going to side with me as the buyer, and I'm going to make sure I get my money back if I get a book that's damaged or the wrong book or etc. A couple more quick questions here. Do I have an average purchase price in mind as I buy? Not really. I think my average overall is about $8. I don't really like to buy penny books and sell them, because if it's a penny book market, I'm probably going to get maybe $20, maybe $25, maybe $30 at the most. And I'll make $10, $12, $15 potentially, but there's also a lot of competition for those books. So I like to go up in the $2 to $10 range that you saw me on the software there. I like to spend a few more dollars because I can sell them for a lot more. So that's something that I like to play with. Do I have a favorite price point? When in doubt, $25, because a non-Prime member can still get free shipping. I love that price point, but I'm not afraid to go higher depending on the market. How often do you reprice? Right now, I found that my books pretty much sell fairly well when I send them in, and they start to slow down 6 or 7. So if I was really on top of it, I'd set up a reminder that 2 months after I send a book in, I'd go back and look at that whole batch of books and kind of reprice accordingly. Time gets in the way. I don't really have time to do that. Right now, like I said, I fired my repricer. I'm trying to work on some better ways to get that going. I may look to outsource that. I may look to develop some software, probably just for myself, maybe sell it eventually, who knows, to help reprice things in bulk, looking at the API and whatever else. But we'll see. At this point, after about 2 months, I've noticed sales start to slow down, and that's probably the ideal time to go back in and reprice. So if you do use a repricer, set it up for 2 or 3 months later and have it reprice your older books. But again, be very careful that you exclude your textbooks and any of your high dollar books, because you don't want to let those go for real cheap in the off season. Prep companies, we've already talked about those. Any other questions? Kind of your last chance here, and we're gonna jump off this webinar. I'll give you guys a minute to type them in. Thank you for being here. I hope it was helpful. Thank you for using eFLIP. I'm grateful to you. I've had a blast building it. I've had a blast meeting several of you, and I hope it continues to be beneficial for all of us. Like I said, I'm not worried about you being my competition or me being your competition. There's a lot of good books. The market is constantly changing, and books that were not good to buy yesterday could very likely be good to buy tomorrow, just because of repricers, because of just the market dynamics in play. So thanks for trusting me. Thanks for your investment in eFLIP, and I wish you much success in your book selling. Looks like we have a few more questions. We'll jump in those. My Keepa isn't showing sales rank, just price. You're just going to want to go in on the Keepa chart then, and there's actually an option you can select to show the price. Let me show you that real quick. So you guys can see my screen again here. If you come off on the side, I think the way it normally shows up is like this, where you're not going to see rank. Make sure you come up here and just click rank. For those of you that like camel, 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 you can click this arrow and put the 0 on top instead of 0 on the bottom. So it'll look exactly like camel, where the better ranks are up here and then the worst ranks are down here. Whatever way you want to look at it, you're welcome to do it. But yeah, just click sales rank there. A couple more questions. How do I handle taxes? I don't mean to be vague here, but talk to a CPA. There's a lot of discussion about Nexus. I would say at a very minimum, make sure you're collecting sales tax in your home state. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Talk to your CPA, whatever they recommend. Follow that because they're much more knowledgeable than I am. All right, guys, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. If I didn't get to your questions, we'll definitely be in touch. We may do some more of these webinars down the road. And I appreciate you being here. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.